I first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, this Model United Nations at the Christ College, for having invited me. I am told that this is a huge gathering of young people here. Nearly 1,800 people have gathered. And personally, I would have loved to be there in person, not on the digital space, because the topic that we're discussing, the importance of debate and discussions for a functional democracy. I have lived far more years than the collective numbers that many of you people in a classroom or a group of people may have. So, and also the fact that I have spent nearly 40 years as a journalist, that kind of counts me out of your system right away, because there is this broad classification of the digital world. And the broad classification is that, that people who are born after 1985 are considered to be digital natives. And people like me who were born in the 1960s, we are not even digital immigrants, So the kind of parameters of debate and discussion that you have, and the kind of parameters of debate and discussion that I have, are fundamentally different. In spite of that, I would like to look at how India and the people in India have engaged with the idea of debate and discussion in a functional democracy. And perhaps what I can tell you on the basis of my own experience as a journalist, especially as a political journalist who had lived in the national capital of Delhi for nearly 3.5 decades. So broadly, I would like to greet all of you youngsters whose idea of discussion is perhaps not entirely dependent on the physical parameters of the discussion, but they can carry on debating and discussing on the telephone, on the internet, using whatever mode of digital mode of engagement that they get. They're capable of engaging and talking to each other and carrying on a discussion. But way back in the mid 1980s, when I started as a journalist, that was not the case. We did not have cell phones. Even the telephone calls had to be, if it was long distance telephone call, there was not even the facility of having subscriber trunk dialing, where the subscriber could himself do the trunk dialing. Trunk dialing was the name at that point of time for long distance calls. And you had to take the help of a exchange, what is called a telephone exchange. You make a call to the telephone exchange, and given the urgency of the call, you can ask for a normal trunk call. You can ask for a urgent trunk call. And if you wanted to speak to somebody instantly, you had to make a lightning trunk call. That was the kind of conversations that, that between when there was a huge medical emergency in the family, that was the kind of conversations that I used to have when I was hardly 20, when I had become a journalist for the first time. But I was telling you in the beginning, you are all digital natives. I don't think there is anybody born before 1985 in the group. Perhaps the teachers are there, but maybe many of the teachers are also born after 1985. So you are called the digital natives, or Generation Y. And then there are people who become digital citizens. Many of my contemporaries have become digital citizens. They have worked in the digital world. They work as programmers, or they work as associates to various adjunct activity of the digital world. And there are digital immigrants. I would qualify myself as a digital immigrant who visits the digital world occasionally and kind of tries to understand what this whole digital world is about and how one can actually engage and discuss and debate in this format. I would admit that, that I'm not very good at that, but I still keep trying. And there are the digital aliens who are completely immune to this whole new world that has come up on the basis of this digital explosion across the world. It's called not exactly digital explosion. The terminology used by the pundits is digital disruption, and it has dramatically altered the kind of world that we live in and the kind of conversations that we have, and also the kind of debate and discussions that we have. But going back to my original statement about the time that I started my journalism in the mid 1980s, I come from a state which is addicted to debate and discussion, for all good things and bad things, for all necessary things and unnecessary things. I come from Kerala. I am sure that there are many Keralites in the audience, and they would understand what I'm saying, because we have a tremendous addiction to any form of debating, whether it is good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. So during those times, when there was no digital disruption around, there was no digital gadgets around, the main center of discussion was what's called the tea shop, the local tea shop, or what's called in Malayalam the Chayapedia. So, and there were times when the local tea shops and the barber shops, because the discussions used to get too animated, the local tea shops and barber shops used to keep boards, please don't discuss politics here. No discussion on politics around. So that was the kind of situation that we had in terms of debate and discussion. But time has passed, the parameters of discussions have changed, and the way in which people engage with the society has changed, as I was telling you about the digital natives and all that. A study of the BBC, a study that was done around 2012, that kind of summarizes the kind of change that has happened in terms of communication, in terms of engagement. The BBC found out, it was an amazing study which kind of looked at the history of communication across the world. And BBC found out that sorry about that, there's a small disruption here. I mean, somebody who came in and kind of knocked at the door. So the BBC found out this amazing amazing facts in the study, which showed that it was about the reach of different kinds of medium to a certain number of people. The minimum quantity that BBC had kept in mind was 1 million. 1 million. What is the number of years that a particular form of media took to kind of reach a capacity of 1 million people? So the calculations were projected to 50 million and 1 billion. And finally, the BBC study underscored that radio, one of the first forms of engagement, communication with the people, the radio took 38 years to reach an audience of 50 million, whereas television took just 13 years to reach an audience of 50 million. The internet, the digital natives factor which I was talking about, the internet took just 4 years to reach 50 million people. And iPod, most probably many of you are not aware of the iPod. iPod was a predecessor to the iPad and the iPhone. It was essentially a music listening device. I was one of the few people who migrated to iPod. iPod just took 3 years to reach 50 million viewers. And then came this huge disruption of Facebook and iPhone apps and the Google phone apps, Android apps. So Facebook just took 9 months to reach 100 million users, not just 50 million users, 100 million users. And iPhone apps took just 9 months to reach 1 billion users. That's about 100 crore users in a matter of 9 months. So just before the pandemic, there was this projection that in the year 2021, of course, the quantification could not be completed by the people who made this projection. The projection was in 2021. The calculations could not be computed by the people who made this projection because of the COVID situation, as you normally would know. So the projection was that in 2021, there will be 24 billion apps interacting with nearly 10 times, there will be 24 billion people interacting with nearly 240 billion apps. So that was the projection, but then the quantification is not yet complete. But then if you look at the manner in which you guys, all of you guys and girls, kind of use your digital spaces, use your apps, use your gadgets, at least there must be 10 apps in each of your phones, in each of your digital apps. So 10 apps into one person is the calculations, the projection they made. And that's why I said that 24 billion people interacting with 240 billion apps in the year 2021. The quantification is not complete. Anyway, so the parameters of debate and discussion have changed, especially for somebody like me who is a ground level political journalist who goes into the lives of people who like to travel more cities and towns like Bangalore, and who tries to capture the manner in which people engage with society, people engage with politics, people engage with the world. And there, what I have seen over the 20 years specifically is huge. We have had internet all these years, last 20 years, and we have had this iPhone across the world over the last few years. But in spite of that, what I find across large parts of India is that there is a huge digital divide which kind of prohibits the kind of debate and discussion that we should have, the kind of creative, widespread debate and discussion that we should have to have a functional democracy. And there are several factors which contribute to this digital divide also. But in spite of all that, in spite of all these factors, doubt that democratic exercise is one of the biggest in the world. 918 million people. That's about that's close to 100 crores. 918 million is about 91 crores. 91 crores people are engaged as voters, are listed as voters, and normally you get about 65% of the percentage of that population going to vote in a general election. So there is no country with the same kind of statistical reach. But does the very fact that we have got such a huge electorate, does that by itself ensure that we have become a functional democracy, that our systems of debate and discussion are all right? So it's here, this question of the digital divide that I was talking about. Of course, I'm sure that all of you youngsters are digital natives and do not suffer from any kind of digital divide that I see in the rural areas of India, in the hinterlands of India. But the majority of people in this country, a large section of the people of this country, are people who are facing this digital divide day in and day out. And in this new world, what is the mode of conversation? What is the mode of dialogue and discussion that they have? What is the kind of engagement that is possible for all these people? That is a big question. And from my perspective, as a person who has been a political journalist for nearly 40 years, next year in August, I will complete 40 years as a journalist. And I would have done political journalism for nearly 38 years of my life. So as somebody who has had this kind of experience in terms of understanding India, understanding its society, its culture, its economy, and most importantly, its politics, I would say that that the culture of debate and discussion, which is, of course, essentially that's a no-brainer actually. That it's very important. I mean, though the organizers have raised as a poster, as a question, how important is debate and discussion? It's a no-brainer because if you look at the history of the world, the history of the world societies, they've all grown only by engaging with one another. The people have engaged with one another using various means, the new mediums of the digital world. So, but then there is a constant engagement. There is a engagement. There is a clash of ideas. There is a criticism. There is counter criticism. As Karl Marx famously said, there is always a thesis that is put forward in a given situation, and there is an antithesis, and finally there comes a synthesis, and that synthesis becomes another thesis, and there is an antithesis to it. So this constant engagement, this constant clash of ideas, that is very, very important in a democracy. So now, in the context of this digital divide, in the context of the fact that the digital disruption has become the primary parameter of this world, and given the fact that that we still have large areas, large tracts of population in this country which do not have access to the digital disruption, the modes of digital disruption, there is a big question mark on what kind of discussion and debate India normally has, or what kind of debate and discussion is possible in the hinterlands of India. That's one primary question. The second question that follows from this, there are people who make use of this digitally disrupted world and the gadgets and the mechanisms that we have got. And I'm sure that many of you are aware as to how social media has invaded the lives of people. Even somebody who is suffering from digital divides, larger parameters, even those people will have a mobile phone, and that mobile phone will have access to social media, and that social media may be used to spread all kinds of fake news. And there is a debate and discussion in the digital forums about this fake news. In fact, this phenomenon was captured in the US way back in 2006 by a stand-up comedian called Ted Colbert. He coined a term called Wikiality. I'm sure that all of you know what Wikipedia is. Wikipedia is a knowledge source where anybody can contribute. But Wikiality is not exactly a knowledge source. It's a contrived reality. It is a reality which exists only when together create a new, altogether new reality with our occasion that just lasted for nearly 4 years. It was created from India. It created the imaginary war between the Portuguese and the army of Shivaji, the great Shivaji, Maratha warrior Shivaji. And it said that that the Shivaji's army had inflicted great damages on the Portuguese, and it recorded that that there was a period when Shivaji's army had captured large tracts of the Portuguese occupied territory, and kept it for themselves and kind of waved off the Portuguese, tried to recapture it. But I'm told that the internet is getting frequently disrupted. This is the problem between that we all of us have in the new world where we are dependent on digital situation. I don't know whether the recording will capture it, but anyway, I will try and conclude as soon as possible, because I think that my time is also getting over. So what I was saying is that this whole new reality, this fictitious reality, was invented on the Wikipedia, and that is why it's called Wikiality. This post stood for nearly 4 years, and apparently there were people who did their research on the basis of this Wikiality input and got their doctorates. I mean, so so that also speaks volumes about the kind of pedagogy that we have in some places in our country. So coming back to the question of the functional democracy and the question of debate and discussion, I think we as a society are constrained by this in having a proper functional democracy and a creative and productive debate and discussion that would ultimately lead to functional democracy. We were a country where a prime minister, as I was telling you, the clash of ideas, the criticism and counter-criticism, thesis, antithesis, synthesis is very important for the development of any functional democracy. And we were a country where one of our prime ministers, the very first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, told a biting, sarcastic cartoonist, another fellow Keralite, Shankar, the legendary cartoonist. He told Shankar, when Shankar drew a really stinging cartoon against him, Shankar was told by Nehru, "Don't spare me, Shankar." So that was the kind of commitment that we used to have towards a culture of debate and discussions. But in recent years, that phenomenon is this whole promotion of harsh criticism, this whole promotion of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, this promotion of a culture of debate and discussion, that is getting seriously diluted. In fact, recent studies have kind of, recent international studies, which are very well documented, have kind of come to the conclusion that India is not a fully functional democracy, but only partly democratic. This study has been made by very important organizations across the world, very important organizations which work in close conformity, in close association with several United Nations bodies, including UNESCO and UNICEF. So these bodies have kind of very clearly underscored, these bodies which include AIDEM Institute and Freedom House, which come out with annual monitors for indices in terms of democracy deficit and democracy strength. So they have come to the conclusion that India in the last few years has become only partly democratic. It is not a fully functional democracy. They point out to several factors. One of the factors that they point out is that, that in India, the media is no longer as free as it used to be. As a person who was a practitioner in the media field for the last nearly 40 years, I can vouchsafe for you that the voices within our midst has become severely compromised. Many of them crawl when they asked to bend. So this is one of the factors. The other factor is the kind of deficit that one has in terms of deficit that we have in terms of the judiciary, functioning of the judiciary. We have cases where the judiciary makes an argument about in a particular case, highlighting several criminal acts done by one side, but finally gives the verdict in favor of that side which has done the criminal action. So basically, these factors, like for example, in the freedom index, in the freedom of the press index, we have been steadily falling, we have been slipping and going down. So in this context, how does one recapture the idea of discussion and debate? I think gatherings like this, where we look up to the United Nations model and we look up to the manner in which this whole debate, this democratic debate, can be built up across various forums, including the digital forums. It's through this that we can recapture the idea of debate and discussion and move to functional democracy. I wish all digital natives gathered here would imbibe this this idea, would uh, would take it to their hearts and to their minds, and create a situation where the slippages that has been identified by various organizations internationally is rectified, and we move towards a fully functional democracy. Wishing you Godspeed in your ventures in this conference, which I am sure is a phenomenally brilliant and bright and energetic conference. I wish you all very good ahead and very good times ahead. Thank you very much.